Hello and welcome again to ICF Live, LinkedIn Live stream. And today I'm so very excited to have my colleague and friend Eddie Turner joining us for our time together. And when you want to start talking about Eddie, you don't know where to start. So I'll start with personal story because Eddie and I think we first met at 100 Coaches Marshall Goldsmith event. And since then, we've been kind of following each other, and it's just an honorary privilege to have Eddie with us today because he is top 10 ranked motivational speaker in the world by global gurus, preeminent authority on emerging leaders by Forbes, PCC certified coach, leadership coach, breakthrough coach, international best-selling author, master facilitator, learning facilitator, and it goes on and on and on and on. One of the most exciting, I think, things is that also Eddie was named top 25 thought leaders by Thinkers 360, top 30 biggest voices in leadership by Leaders Hum, top 25 global mentor, and of course Eddie on that power list for 2023 of 200 biggest voices in leadership. I think Eddie, you were ranked 13th.
Yes, ma'am.
So, what is it about leadership that is different these days, or is it?
Well, first of all, thank you, Magda, for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you and the opportunity to speak to our community of coaches and others around the world as a part of the International Coaching Federation. With leadership, in some ways, it's all the same. And in other ways, it is very, very different. All the same in the sense that fundamentally, to be a leader, you have to have followers.
Hmm.
But different in the sense that we need to understand there's different phases of leadership, different levels of leadership, especially as you look at the 21st century, where the models of yesteryear are not necessarily still applicable.
Right, right. So you are such a big voice in leadership development. You have a program that focuses on leadership development, and I think you primarily focus on emerging leaders. Is that right?
Well, when I had the program, the Keep Leading podcast, it was about leadership in all levels. And the idea was that you don't reach a level and once a leader, always a leader. I've
Uh-huh.
made it. But it's a continuous action. You must keep leading. And my work and focus around emerging leaders came out of my observation and then tested through uh, surveys, interviews of others, in that we often look at leadership as just being one level,
Hmm.
but that I started to see there's many levels of leadership, and I challenge people to expand their lens and open that. And in my book, which was meant to be a short book of quick sayings and statements, I put in the appendix my viewpoint on what is an emerging leader, and I created 10 categories for what it means to be an emerging leader.
Mm-hmm. Lots of research, including the one done by ICF with either PricewaterhouseCoopers or Human Capital Institute, points to the fact that the younger generations that are quickly becoming the most significant workforce or the percentage of workforce around the globe, they look differently at leadership and they look differently for what they expect of a person that is leader for them. Did you notice that in your work?
Absolutely. I noticed that in my work and certainly in the survey that the International Coaching Federation released in that survey with Price Waterhouse in 2020. It
Mhm,
highlighted the changing demographics around the globe and the
mhm.
impact that coaching was having, both in terms of who was looking for coaching and who was actually showing up as
That's
coaches.
good. Mhm.
And so the idea that you have to wait until you're an experienced person in an organization is no longer the case. In fact, it might be said the younger the better. I had a chance to be involved in an amazing program that you're very familiar with, obviously, at Rice University here in Houston,
Of
Texas.
course.
And that is the Door Institute for New Leaders. And essentially, in the 30-second soundbite, Ann and John Doerr were graduates of Harvard, graduates of Rice University, who John Doerr actually later went on and got his MBA from Harvard. And they looked back. They went on to become phenomenally successful. They became billionaires. And he looked back and said, how can I help the students at Rice, our alma mater? And they donated $15 million in 2010 and said, turn all the students of engineering, where they came from, into leaders. They're smart, but they're not necessarily leaders. And so
Mm.
they believed in coaching. And so John Doerr said he paid for coaching, and it was set up that professional ICF certified coaches would coach these young people starting
Yeah,
at age 18 years old. It was
yeah.
so successful in 2015, he increased it to $50 million and said, turn every student at Rice University into a leader. And so I had the privilege of working with people as young as 18 years old and all the way to those working on PhDs who are, in many cases, sometimes 50 or 60 years old, using the power of coaching.
Yeah, Tom Kolditz, who used to lead the Door Institute, was a guest on this podcast as well. And yeah, I'm a big fan of the program and everything they do, showing exactly that even the college level education
Mhm.
perhaps is not putting enough attention on the fact that those individuals or young people are not learning necessarily leadership skills in their typical regular curriculum.
Mhm.
So big thanks to John Doerr, but at the same time to the Doerr Institute and Tom and his team who are
Yes, Tom
leading
and
that.
his team did phenomenal work, and he's quite a leader himself,
Oh
and
yes.
really leadership in motion, if you will.
Yeah, I think that Tom is one of the great examples of what you said. There are so many levels of leadership
Mhm.
because retired four-star general, for those who
Yes,
don't know,
yes.
Thomas Kolditz, but he was a leader at West Point. He was a leader at different universities. He was a leader in I think he's the only person I know who has a PhD in war strategy. I'm a little bit scared of that. And then he completely turned it around and led the Door Institute, not being shy of stating what maybe people were thinking, but not saying. So to me, Tom is just a great example of always a leader, even if it takes different forms. And
Yeah.
working with young people and coaching. So yeah, let's go there. So we know again from our studies that coaching so helps with self awareness
Mhm.
of a person. It also, improves communication skills, teamwork. But that self awareness is, I think, what points to the different qualities and different traits of a modern leader.
Right.
Even 10 years ago, we probably never heard that the leader should be vulnerable, or empathetic,
Mhm.
or asking opinions to the point that sometimes we would hear people saying, if you're a leader, you need to have an answer. You don't. Why are you asking us?
Mhm.
You need to be the one with the answers. So with leadership development and coaching, where do you see the great connection and the leverage?
Wow. You hit a lot of different areas there with that, Magda. And so let me just take a couple of those, if I might. Yes, indeed. When it comes to leadership, one of the ideas of the 1960s, 70s was the leadership model used in great corporations such as GE, where I spent 10 years, the Jack Welch model. And,
Yes, yes.
and that model was much more of a command and control. And the leader was expected to be the smartest person, to have all the answers.
Mm,
But what the greatest leaders eventually learn, especially now in the 21st century, is that we're in the knowledge economy. We are no longer in the industrial economy. And in the knowledge economy, knowledge grows exponential, and it's difficult to keep up. And so no leader can possibly know everything.
mm,
And in fact, if you're a great leader, you will not know the job better than anyone else,
that's right.
because you're the visionary, you're the strategist, you're seeing down the field. The people that know it best are the ones that are doing the day to day. They're in the minutia, if you will. So yes, you're smart, you're intellectual, you know the work, you know the business, but all of the finite details are usually other people. and to take that pressure off themselves is what leaders should do.
Mm,
To understand that, as I say when it comes to coaching, uh, I'm an expert in the process, not the content.
mm-hmm.
So if I'm trying to be a content expert, that's a lot of pressure. But if I
Yes.
know my processes as a coach, the tools, the techniques, now that expertise I can use with, it doesn't matter where I am in terms of content.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that also the coaching, well, we do say that it empowers, right? It empowers the person being coached. It empowers them to make decisions, have the voice, and it's also empowering in a way that um, the style of members of leadership changes
Yes.
because of the impact of coaching. Do you
And
see it
so
with your clients at all?
absolutely. And so when we look at you referenced the idea of self awareness. And with coaching, we help create self awareness in leaders. In fact, a great reason for many of the foibles that we have in leadership is we lack self awareness.
Right.
You talked about empathy. We lack empathy. In fact, one leader basically called empathy a dirty word, if you will.
Right.
Because this idea of being soft, as he put it, was something that was frowned on. You must be stern, you must be tough, rough. And no, especially today, what people need is more empathy, more warmth. And that comes from a leader who is self aware enough to understand who they are and then how they're coming across other people and how they can best serve others. And of course, we know that to be a realm of emotional intelligence. And so the focus of taking the emphasis off of IQ,
Yeah.
shifting it to EQ, is what is one of uh, the biggest shifts, I would say, in leadership these days. One person said very nicely, IQ gets you through school, but EQ gets you through life.
Mm, very nicely said. Yeah, there was a research, I think we did it with Capital Institute, HCI, that pointed to the also to the fact that now with the generational shift,
Mhm,
we see in the US baby boomers generation retiring, and they constituted a great number of leaders in a workplace. So there are younger people coming to being promoted
mhm,
to people's managers. And again, back to Rice University example, they do not have tools. They don't know how to. So it's probably more by trying.
mhm,
And again, I think what we started seeing the success of coaching at the university level, or even earlier
mhm.
in high school level, is something that perhaps is giving them leg up in being good leaders.
Absolutely. It makes a tremendous difference. Uh, One of the things that Tom Coates did is he invited Jim Kouzes, the author of the Leadership Challenge, to Rice University to speak to all of us as coaches. And he said something that's in his book, which is in its sixth edition. He and his co-writer, uh, Barry Posner, they've been writing about this for 30 years.
Hmm.
And their research revealed that the average leader works for 10 years in a leadership position before receiving any leadership training. And
Ouch.
to think about the damage that people have done as they've been practicing leadership all those years.
Yeah.
And so, what coaching has done, as you mentioned, what General Cole said earlier, that leadership doesn't happen in the classroom in terms of training. They don't teach that. And even if they did, it's at a general level, right?
Yeah.
So, coaching uniquely builds a leader individually. And
Mhm.
with that program, we have numerous examples that came out of that of people that were so far ahead at a leadership level that people wonder, what's how could this be real? Is this person really this mature? Is this person really this developed? And as a coach, it's a wonderful thing because so often we go in and we have people that have been practicing wrong for so long, we have to try to help them undo bad habits. But as General Coldis would say, coaching early helps bend the arc so they
Yeah.
don't have all these bad habits that they have to unlearn.
Yeah, unlearning is more difficult than learning, I think, just from my own perspective.
Mine too.
Speaking of celebration, you just told me that your book, the one that you have now the Annex 2, right? It's been 5 years since it was published. Is that
Yes, 5 years since we had it published, and so really happy about that. Oh my goodness, that I did a promotion about it because it's I'm excited that something that I put out has reached so many places in the earth. It did internationally, and it's just a short book of different quotes that you can use for leading. And in the back of the book, the appendix, as I mentioned earlier, is where I kind of put a little bit more of the thought leadership that I had around what it means to be an emerging leader, and then what it means to be coached. What is coaching is actually what that article was about, and why it matters to emerging leaders.
I thank you for that because I think that although the awareness of professional coaching is growing around the world and pretty exponentially, uh, and yet there is still a little bit of a confusion.
Yeah.
If you dig a little deeper, the definition that people who either received coaching or they think they received coaching, or the ones who say they know what coaching is, maybe a little bit on the periphery of what we would say is professional coaching. So I really thank you for saying about what coaching is. And again, not to say that coaching is a silver bullet,
Mhm.
because it is not, right? It is still important to recognize what action could be best taken
Mhm.
in order to close the gap in some kind of a deficiency, if you will, or to help move forward. Um, so, what would you say to people who are considering coaching? Also, because I think we still have a little bit of a uh, mindset that coaching is only for top level, that coaching is only for C-suite, that
Yes.
coaching is only for wise and mature. We already talked about coaching younger people, but what else would you say to people who are considering coaching but maybe a little scared, maybe thinking they don't need it, they don't want how to find a coach, or frankly speaking, that they cannot afford coaching?
Well, there are many viewpoints on what coaching is, and that affects how people feel it can be applied.
Yeah.
And so, when we understand really that coaching is one of the best modalities to improve, period, anything, right? Then we can understand that coaching is for everybody. I tell my 2.5-year-old daughter she's going to be the world's greatest coach because I'm coaching her now, right? I'm teaching her coaching skills. And literally, I believe that it changes one person at a time, which we hope changes our world. And when managers, I taught a program for ATD for 5 years. We use ICF modeling,
Yeah.
that even if you don't want to be a certified coach, we believe this helps you manage better if you use a coaching approach. We believe that one of my clients, she's going to be a veterinarian, but she's a certified coach. She has her ACC, and she's going to be a better listener,
Yes.
right? She'll ask better questions for whatever it is. So we believe that coaching helps people no matter what age or what their profession will be, that if you are a coach first and a leader second, you will be most effective.
Hmm. And effective is the word, right? Because again, back to PwC studies, we do know that managers and leaders using coaching skills is the
Mhm.
fastest growing part of a spectrum of coaching, from top level professional coach to somebody who's using coaching style
Mhm.
in their management. And yeah, you're right. You mentioned your daughter, and I know you also have a 5 month old son.
Yes.
They are probably teaching you a lot, huh?
Actually, they are. One of the things I used to say, because I read it in a book and thought it made sense, and then I had my own children, and I realized it's a lot more to it than what I said. When when I would teach the program, I would say with coaches that if you want to have your full intuition turned on, act like you're talking to a child who
Mm,
can't explain everything, and so you must truly just be present and take in what's not being said.
mm,
And now, as a parent, I get a chance to practice that every day in a new way. But it really is true, and so that's why I say that, and that simple everyday exercise is really what we need to do with our clients sometimes.
Mhm.
Is we're listening and we're just taking in what they're giving us. And then as we teach, reflecting it back.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, you're right. If the child not always can explain something in a eloquent way,
Yes.
so listening for what's behind the simple words is a great, yet another great coaching and leadership technique. So you can add it to your 140, right?
Yes, ma'am.
140. That's great. That's great. So let's just stay for a second with your book, 140 simple messages. Uh, which I was taken by the title, because again, this is to say that message does not have to be complicated. Message does not have to be um, very eloquently put together. Message, in fact, the simpler the better,
Yes.
because this is what lands. So what got you to think about 140 simple messages?
At the time, 140 characters was the limitation of Twitter. Now,
Oh, that's right.
and literally, as I was finishing the book, they expanded it. They doubled it to 280. So the titles are. It was a long title. That was my first book. It should just be called Emerging Leaders, but that's another story. But so that's really where it came from. And the reason I
Mhm.
was convinced that that method could work is number one, these are things I would quote all the time in a coaching session or when I'm giving a keynote speech or teaching a program. These are things I would just say
Yeah.
that I live by. So I thought it would be helpful to others. But I had also at that time I was writing a column. I was writing for Forbes, and they had this Q&A section, and you were limited to I think 400 characters.
Yes.
And I would see that those articles landed like 100,000 views, like around the world. So I was convinced of the power of short, succinct messages, effective, easy to remember, and they really have an impact on people.
Yeah.
And that was the thought behind it.
Wow, that's a great story. I did not know the story behind the 140 coming from Twitter. So sure, absolutely.
Now, my publisher has it as a format as well, but that's why I thought it could work. Because otherwise, I would have looked at that and thought, nah, that doesn't make sense.
But it's true. I do write for Forbes.com as well,
Oh,
and
that's
it
right. I read your column. How can I forget?
yeah, and this is good because you do have 400 characters. That's all. Uh,
Yes.
so you have to get to the essence
Yes.
of your message very quickly. That's and probably catches people's attention for 400 characters, right? Yeah. Well, Eddie, our time, is coming to an end, as it always happens with those meetings. So I really want to thank you again so much for joining us. And would would you have a simple and succinct message to our viewers today?
Yes. Always keep leading.
That was probably 140 characters or less. That's fantastic. Always leading. Yeah, I think that recognizing that the leadership capacity does reside in all of us at those different levels. That's a very powerful and a very positive and very empowering message. So thank you so much for that, Eddie. And lovely having you with us today. And I wish you the great rest of your day.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.